Kayfabe is one of the most unique elements that the world of professional wrestling brings to the sports or entertainment genre. Nowhere else can you find a live product that sells itself as real sport while simultaneously being a well-oiled and believable act. In the early days of professional wrestling, knowledge of combat sports was limited and sharing of knowledge was just as limited. Professional wrestling lived in many people's minds as a genuine form of combat between two athletes. As the years went on and combat sports became bigger, it was more and more obvious to more and more people that the world of professional wrestling was what it eventually became known as, and that was a work. In the modern era of wrestling, it's almost impossible to sell professional wrestling as a genuine work. 99% of people that watch professional wrestling understand that it is a work and suspend their disbelief to enjoy the art form, similar to how people would do for a movie, TV show, or play. We know that the professional wrestlers in the ring have premeditated most of their match and that they are working together to deliver an entertaining product. The ability to fool a wrestling crowd nowadays is virtually impossible. With the amount of wrestling news websites, fan channels, forums, and leaks, there are very few stones unturned when it comes to professional wrestling today. For many years, the industry essentially gave up in trying to fool crowds and plugged along with very little attempt at evolving the art of working a crowd. And for the longest time, the idea of kayfabe being dead was well and truly accepted by promotions, wrestlers, and fans alike. It wasn't until I started watching New Japan Pro Wrestling that I realized that not the entire professional wrestling world felt this way, and that even though it seemed as if WWE had conceded defeat to the idea, kayfabe still had a very pivotal place in professional wrestling. It had only evolved to something else entirely. We have seen the blurring of lines enter AEW's product slowly but surely. While I'm sure many of you could credit indie promotions or other promotions that have done similar or even more elaborate works, or potentially mixing of works and shoots, seeing it on national television in North America is not something we've seen in a very long time. Credit where credit is due, WWE have lent into this before, albeit only with their major wrestlers and major programs, but funnily enough, a man that made it almost common to combine these worlds was in fact CM Punk. His feuds with Jeff Hardy, John Cena, The Rock, and Triple H all memorably had references to the real world, not just the on-air WWE characters, which is certainly a huge step for WWE, whose policy is usually to completely annex any shred of genuine personal connection to a character. They are notoriously known for having professional wrestlers play characters with no relation to their personas at all. The evolution of blurring the lines, in my opinion, is becoming more and more important when it comes to the world of professional wrestling. And what do I mean by blurring the lines? I'll use the obvious and most recent reference at hand. It's obvious that, work or shoot, MJF has had genuine emotions towards Tony Khan and AEW with regards to his contract at one stage or another. And while in recent history under the WWE banner, this would all be squashed backstage or swept under the rug, and MJF would continue to play his character with no blending of his real world personality into his professional wrestling character, in AEW, the merging of these two worlds has been able to take place. They lean into this and have fun with it. At the end of the day, professional wrestling is meant to be a believable work. And even though fans now know that the action inside the ring is scripted, you can still keep them guessing with behind the scenes information. No one had any idea what was going on over the Double or Nothing weekend, and even now opinions and reports vary on what happened and how much of it was planned by the parties involved. Similar to New Japan Pro Wrestling, real life opinions and emotions are encouraged to be brought to the forefront and involved in the show. Kayfabe isn't dead, it's just manifested into a different form, and MJF has taken it to a whole new level, and in return, we've seen him elevate himself to a whole new level too. I'm convinced that in 5 years' time, we will be looking back at the summer that is to come as one of the most influential periods in AEW's history. I guess specifically, we will be nostalgically looking back at the development that MJF will be going through and his final steps on his journey to AEW World Champion. Strange enough that it's coming fresh off the heels of a loss to Wardlow, which honestly leaves a strange taste in my mouth for various reasons. MJF is undoubtedly at the top of the mountain when it comes to heel heel characters in professional wrestling, but he's also one of the best overall wrestlers in the world. It always seemed that sooner rather than later, he would be ushered as the AEW champion, and I don't think that plan has changed much, apart from potentially the timing. It's hard to keep a guy like MJF busy, but AEW have done their best to distract him and keep him occupied while the AEW world title scene has been developing naturally. He's gone through feuds with Chris Jericho, CM Punk, and Wardlow, and despite picking up wins against Jericho and Punk, he's actually lost all those last 3 feuds on pay-per-view. In fact, looking it up now, the last time MJF won a singles match on pay-per-view was Full Gear 2021 against Darby Allin, which is now over half a year ago. He leaves these feuds usually in better condition than he enters them, and he's been elevated by all of them, but kayfabe-wise, MJF has been far from convincing as a top contender for the AEW title. His loss to Wardlow, again from a kayfabe sense, was an embarrassment that should see him firmly outside the top 5 power rankings, yet MJF has this way of always making himself relevant. He said it himself in his nuke of a promo, everything he touches turns to gold. I thought his feuds with Jericho and Punk were outstanding, as was this last one against Wardlow, which by the way, was the only one of these 3 feuds that did not have any 50-50 booking. MJF's talent when it comes to mic skills, along with the way AEW books him, always leaves him lurking in the shadows as a potential contender for the next AEW champion. I'm not really sure what the next step is for MJF, but one thing I'm fairly confident in saying is that the next few months should poetically be remembered as the summer of MJF. There's something truly special and borderline beautiful about the way CM Punk and MJF have been booked. The many ways that MJF could emulate a younger CM Punk and the famous Summer of Punks, again, I have to say, is potentially very poetic. Even now, over a decade since the first Summer of Punk, CM Punk finds himself as a world champion heading into AEW's biggest summer to date. He was set to face the biggest name in Japanese wrestling from the 21st century in Hiroshi Tanahashi in what was going to go down as a historic merging of professional wrestling worlds, which I do hope becomes an annual event. But Punk's summer has to come to an end eventually, and I see no better way than to transition MJF finally, and probably delayed, into a genuine certified top guy in AEW. The reason that I still feel this way about MJF, and the reason that many people still see MJF as a potential world champion, is this ability that he has to blow the lines. He's the most believable man, I would say, in professional wrestling, if not one of the most believable. He plays his character to an absolute T. MJF, whether you see him in the ring, outside the ring, in interviews, it doesn't matter what MJF is doing, he is always in character, and I think that has elevated MJF to another level. And that's how I believe MJF has stayed relevant after 3 pay-per-view losses in a row, which says a lot, by the way. I don't think many people could suffer 3 pay-per-view losses in a row and still come out of it as the guy you would expect to become the next AEW champion or the next world champion of their company. I do hope that AEW continues to lean into these shoot work style scenarios. I don't think that every single wrestler should do it, and I don't think every single program should do it, but it is definitely something that AEW should lean into. I did reference New Japan a few times in this video, and the way that New Japan does it almost makes you feel like you're watching a genuine sport. It does not feel like the professional wrestling that we see in North America, and that is something that I truly appreciate about what they do and the way they blur the lines. I think that is what creates the best program. I think that's what creates the best drama. I think that's what piques the most interest, is when you do blur the line, mix the work and the shoot, have fans genuinely guessing, because then they are genuinely invested. So I'd like to see more of it involved in AEW, and I think MJF has set a great example of how wrestlers in the future can mix a work and a shoot, blur the lines, and get fans really involved to a genuine, it's still real to me, damn it level, where we don't know what's going on and we're genuinely trying to find out. I think it's beautiful. I think it's the way wrestling should be done. If you did enjoy today's video, help me out in the algorithm, leave a like and leave a comment down below. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on everything that I've said here today. You know I'll be down there, so I'll see you down there. Hope you enjoyed and hope you guys are happy and healthy. I'll see you in the next one soon. See ya!